social media family. I'm back with how DJ Khaled say it, another one. I'm back with another one. This video goes out to the two brothers known in the conscious community as Dane Calloway and the legendary TuT-Catz. Now, before anybody gets all in their feelings, as to why it is I'm dropping the names of these two brothers, before anybody, getting their feelings, because I know a lot of people associate me as somebody, that's, with the conscious community. I'm associated, I associate with the conscious community, but I'm not necessarily with, I'm not necessarily a part of that tribe. I'm associated with the tribe, but I'm not a part of that tribe. I'm associated with the woke community. And I'm not talking about the government's version of woke. I'm referring to the Erykah Badu, Lauryn Hill version of woke. The Kushite community, the Kemetic community. Those of us who are bloodline descendants of East Africans, bloodline descendants of those who created the first civilizations in East Africa. Our version of woke is those of us who have ancestors inside of us that have awakened in us. We are what the Bible refers to as the return of God. The return of God and the return of the kingdom of God on this earth. That is what I represent. And as many of you in the conscious community know or are aware of, you are aware that Dane Calloway and the legendary TuT-Catz, they claim the Aboriginal community. The Aboriginal Indian, those that say that they are indigenous to America, black indigenous to America, that is the community that they represent. And I'm saying all of this because, if these brothers, if they do happen to see this video, which I'm hoping they do because it's actually ancestors inside of me reaching out to them. So I am hoping that they see this video, but I'm breaking down like who's who, between the conscious community, the woke community, the indigenous America community. I'm breaking all of that down because if you have been following the conscious community, you know that there has been, like feuding going on between those two, the conscious community and the Aboriginal indigenous to America community. There's been like a feuding going on between these two. And I don't know if we can really say that it's a feud. Some of them in both communities, some inside the black indigenous to America family, and then those in the Pan-African family. You know what I'm saying? There are people inside those two families that have really turned it into a feud. If you listen to some of their social media spaces, man, they really be going in on each other, man. It's almost like, over there in the white side, when you go into the white people kingdom, you see that there's like a feud like going on, like the Hatfields and the McCoys. It's like that when it comes down, when you come over into the black kingdom, you see the Pan-Africans blasting on the indigenous black indigenous Indian community. It's like a black version of the Hatfields and the McCoys and stuff. And I'm just saying all this because I don't want nobody associating me with none of that. Now, I will get in my feelings, over certain things when it comes down to Dane Calloway and legendary TuT-Catz. There are some things I will get in my feelings, and then, I might, start, blowing and puffing some smoke too, but I'll get into that a little bit later on. I just, want to start this video off to let these brothers know that this video is not a smoke video. At least I don't intend for it to be. The only way this video might seem like it's turning into smoke is if you fall into the category that I discuss a little bit later on in this video. And I would rather believe that y'all are not what it is that I'm going to touch on toward the end of this video. So this is not a smoke video, but ancestors inside of me is wanting me to reach out to y'all, Dane Calloway and legendary TuT-Catz. And I'm not sure if y'all know who I am. I don't know if y'all watch Sonetta TV, Sonetta Studios, House of Consciousness Productions, Black News 102, HOK Debate Coliseum. I don't know if you watch those platforms. Shout out to those platforms. Shout out to Sonetta, because like I always say, there are discussions taking place on that platform that those of us that identify as black, those of us that identify as Pan-African, there are discussions taking place on that platform that all of us need to hear and be a part of. And these discussions that ancestors want us to engage in, we would not even be engaging in these conversations if it was not for Sonetta's platform. So a lot of us might not agree with the way Sonetta goes about his business, but we just have to trust and believe the ancestors got him, man. The ancestors is guiding him down the path that he's supposed to be on. We have to trust and believe that the lane that he's supposed to be in, and whatever his purpose is, we have to trust and believe the ancestors is guiding him. We, like I said, I don't even myself, there's things that Sonetta be doing that I don't agree with, but at the end of the day, I'm like, I know that he's got ancestors' blood running through his veins. I don't think that he's so polluted to where he's cut off from ancestors and he can't hear his ancestors talking to him. I can't go down that road and just automatically assume that the brother's cut off and he's going in the wrong direction and all. I just have to just fall back. Wherever I have discrepancies or wherever I have issues, him being the big brother, as the little brother, I gotta let the big brother know, like, yo, I feel like you eating all of the cereal, man. Well, why you taking all the crunch berries out the Captain Crunch, man? It's gonna be, it has to be, that type of energy at the end of the day when I don't agree with some of the stuff that he's doing or how he going about doing things, man. But it's just big brother, little brother disagreement. But we still got the same parents, and we still got to give respect to our parents and make sure we're doing what our parents is wanting us to do. And parents being our ancestors. So maybe mom and dad is telling him to do something, and they telling me to do something, and they got me and him doing different things. So I can't really be really getting on his case, because I don't like, how he maneuvering the vacuum cleaner when I'm supposed to be over here with the duster and stuff. So it is what it is, man. At the end of the day, we got to give props to Sonetta and that platform, because these discussions that's taking place, they're discussions that ancestors be wanting us to have in the living room. And with that being said, that's the same energy that I'm coming with when doing this video, reaching out to Dane Calloway and legendary Top Catz. But what I was saying is, I'm not sure if y'all know who I am, if y'all have seen me on Sonetta's platform, but if you have seen me on Sonetta's platform, you have come to know and understand that, Moses 777, my understanding of the Bible is totally different from the understanding that people on that platform have. When I read that Bible, I don't read it in its English form only. That Bible is about people that were dwelling in a territory called Canaan. And from the biblical understanding of things, Canaan is an African territory, because Canaan was a son of Ham. And this is according to the Bible. This is the Bible story. Ham is, according to these biblical people, is a African people. And this Ham, who is of the African people, had sons. So if this Ham, who is of the African people, had sons, we have to believe that the sons were also African people. And one of the sons that Ham had, name was Canaan. Now these sons of this biblical African person, Ham, these African sons had land in Africa. And one of the territories in Africa that this African son, Canaan, had is sitting in the territory where biblical Eden was. Biblical Eden is this territory called Canaan. And it stretches from that territory all the way over to southern Iraq, which was Sumeria. Also in the area of Jordan. If you listen to John Henry Clark, the professor John Henry Clark, he is one of those that will tell you that there is no such thing as the Middle East. That the Middle East is just a northeastern part of Africa. From a biblical standpoint, the Middle East is the Garden of Eden. And Africa is Eden. That, the Middle East is the garden that was planted east of Eden. The Middle East is east of Africa. Africa is Eden. The Middle East is the Garden of Eden. But specifically, that territory in the southern part of the Middle East, known as Iraq, or the southern part of Iraq, all the way over into that territory, that African territory called Canaan. And the reason why I'm telling y'all this is because in the university that James Strong attended, James Strong is the one that created the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible. In that university, they studied languages over there in that East African territory, from Ethiopia, Nubia, Kemet. In that territory called Canaan, there were people known as Phoenicians. These people in that university where James Strong went to, they studied the languages of these people in East Africa. And studying these languages, they were able to construct the Bible. And I don't even think it was just that university. You know, there has been other people, but the university that James Strong's went to, there were other institutions before that university that were studying that ancient language, or the ancient languages of Africa, of Northeast Africa. The Greeks were studying the language of these people in East Africa. The Romans were studying the language of these people in East Africa. The Arabs were studying the language of these people in East Africa. The Greek, I already said the Greeks. The Greeks, the Romans, and the Arabs were all studying the languages of these people in that East African territory. And then also, you know, when it comes down to Christianity, the universities over here were also studying those languages in ancient East Africa. And so when James Strong's puts together his exhaustive concordance of the Bible, he placed a Hebrew Chaldee dictionary and a Greek dictionary in the back of that exhaustive concordance. So I'm saying all of that to say this. This is the reason why I don't have the same understanding of the Bible that Hebrew Israelites, Christians, Muslims, Jews. This is the reason why my understanding of the Bible is different from a lot of them, because I'm studying that dictionary in the back of the Strong's exhaustive concordance. I'm not just going off of the stories that are written in the Bible. I'm looking at each and every word. Like, for example, in Genesis chapter 1, right? It says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So when it comes down to Hebrew Israelites, Muslims, Jews, Christians, you know, that are reading that Bible in the English language, they take that verse and that's it. They just run with that. When I read it, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, I'm looking for the word beginning in that Hebrew Chaldee dictionary, because I want to know what that English word beginning means in the language of those people in that territory, in that territory called Canaan, that African territory called Canaan, where the Phoenicians was. Because the biblical Hebrews, they are Phoenicians. There were no people called Hebrews. According to the people that lived in that land, according to the Phoenicians that were living in that land, that word Hebrew, it means land opposite of the Jordan. And that is what Canaan is. Canaan land, where the Phoenicians were living, is the land that is opposite of the Jordan. So that is why I know that these people are Phoenicians. They are not Hebrew Israelites. But I want to know what that English word beginning means in their language. So I'm going into the Hebrew Chaldee dictionary and reading the English word beginning to see how you pronounce it in their language and what it means in their language. And then I read the scripture again. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now I want to know what that English word God means in the language of those Phoenician people. I go back to the scripture again. In the beginning, God created. Now I want to know what the English word created means in those people's language. Then I go back to the scripture. In the beginning, God created the heavens. Now I want to know what the English word heaven means in those people's language and how to pronounce it. Then I go back to the scripture. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. Now I want to know what the English word earth means in those people's language. This is how I study the Bible. When you listen to them on Sonetta's channel, that's not how they study the Bible. And that is the reason why, y'all see me getting emotional on Sonetta's channel, and I'm almost screaming at the top of my lungs because these people are not listening. And because they don't understand the Bible the way that I understand it, they don't see what's coming. And I get emotional because they don't see what's coming. I'm trying to awaken them to something that's coming. And they're not seeing what's coming because they have been indoctrinated by white supremacist seminary school understandings, or not understandings, I'm not going to say that. Because white people understand that Bible the way it's supposed to be understood. They know what's coming. They are prepared for what's coming. Because one thing about that Bible that they know is that it is history that repeats itself. They see history done repeated itself more than several times in that book. They understand that that book is Helios Biblios. It's a time clock that tells time according to life. Like when you make certain mistakes, this is going to be the result of those mistakes. And they see that the mistakes have been made, and they know what's coming as a result of the mistakes that have been made because they understand that book the way it's supposed to be understood. But they teach people like Sonetta and everybody else on that platform, they teach them the magical, mystical version. Stories about the invisible man talking to his favorite people. That's how they teach these descendants of African people that built the first civilizations in East Africa. And they get on that platform, and that's all they talk about is the invisible man and how they was taught the Bible according to the white supremacist seminary school teachers. And then when I come up there, I'm like that stone that the builders rejected. I'm that chief cornerstone that the builders rejected. And that's how they be treating me on that platform when I be trying to wake them up, to what's really going on in that book. So that's a reason why I'm reaching out to you, Dean Calloway, and I'm reaching out to you, legendary Top Catz. All right, so I think I've, proven the point that my understanding of the Bible is totally different from their understanding of the Bible. My understanding is different from Jabari's, Smash Rockwell, Brother Reggie, Bobby Banger, also known as Ankh, Chris MVP Harris, who else? Brother Shaka Amos, Sonetta, Nepal. My understanding is different than the Hebrew Israelites, Captain Tazariot. My understanding of that book is different from all of them. So I need y'all to understand that because of what it is that I'm getting ready to tell y'all. Now, I would be classified as a Pan-Africanist. Yes, I am a follower of Marcus Garvey. I understand that Bible the way that Marcus Garvey and Adolf Hitler understand that Bible. But I'm considered Pan-Africanist because I'm a descendant of East Africans that built the first civilization. And I understand what Africa's purpose is on this planet. But as a Pan-Africanist, I can't give y'all the same smoke that other Pan-Africanists be giving y'all because there are other Pan-Africanists that don't understand the Bible the way that I understand it because they don't study the Bible the way that I've been studying it. So I'm here to tell y'all that I cannot give y'all that same smoke as a Pan-Africanist because my understanding of the Bible tells me that Africans were coming over here to the Americas when the black Indians were in charge of all of this over here. From all the way down there in, let's say it like this. Let's say Peru was the capital of what was going on in North America and South America. That's how I see Peru. Where the pyramids of the Aztecs, where that whole, civilization is standing. According to my understanding of the Bible, my ancestors were traveling westward across the Mediterranean, along the coast of Africa, on the Mediterranean, towards the Atlantic. And this is happening during a time when continental drift was not as bad as it is today. The so-called Atlantic Ocean was not as vast as it is today. And this is during the time of the Phoenicians. If y'all ever get a chance to take the time, I want y'all to look at the time of the Kemetic, or what they call it, Egypt, Egyptian civilization. I want y'all to look at the start of Egyptian dynasties to the end of the Egyptian dynasties. And then I want y'all to look at the beginning of the Phoenician Empire and the end of the Phoenician Empire. And you will see that those two kingdoms ran together during the time that Egypt was on a decline. The Phoenicians were like on an upcline. They were starting to rise as the citizen, or as the kingdom, or the dynasties of Kemet were on a decline. I'm not going to get into why that was happening. I'm pointing that out because you'll find that the Phoenicians were seafarers. These were shipbuilders. These were navigators of the seas. They were not just setting sail out of the area of Kemet or out of the area of Canaan. Their ships are also known to have been down in Ethiopia area. And those shipping ports, even during the time of, I don't know if they were still considered the Phoenicians during the time of the Aksumite Empire, but that whole maritime trade, that whole maritime concept, it started with the Phoenicians. And they were sailing westward, and on them ships was Africans. And they were involved in trade with the Black Indians over here in the West. Now, this is where the Bible comes in. The Bible got this story about Joseph, who is, according to the Bible, he is a son of Israel. And I just want to say to y'all, my understanding of Israel is totally different than Hebrew Israelites. I don't even read that word the same way that Israelites read that word. When I look at that word, I see Israel. Israel. Like it's a question. It's like we all know that Ra is supposedly a sun deity. And the word El is short for Elohim. And Elohim is the word for God. And so when I see that, it's like a question that the Greeks, at least, the Greeks that didn't have, that did not have the best intentions for Kemet. Greeks that did not have the best intentions for Kemet, or Romans that did not have the best intentions for Kemet. That's like a question. Is Ra El, is Ra Elohim, is Ra God? Because, we all know that Kemet, or Egypt, became slaves to Greece. They became slaves to Rome. And so, it's like, so if y'all God, how come is it that, now we got our foot on y'all neck? But the reason why they had their foot on the neck of the gods is because the gods invited them into their house. And those gods that had invited the Greeks and the Romans into their house were told by the elder gods, their ancestors, don't ever allow any strangers into these African lands. Because if you start inviting these people from the North Hemisphere, the East Hemisphere, the South Hemisphere, the West Hemisphere into your territory, they're going to start taking over. If you start making babies with these people, they're going to eventually, they're going to end up taking it away from you. Because their children the children that you're making with them, those children are going to end up having more of an allegiance to their families, their outside families, more allegiance to their outside families than they do their own African family. But I'm getting off subject. What I'm trying to point out is my understanding of the Bible tells me that the Phoenicians, with Africans on them ships or on them boats, them big old ships that had like the rowing crew. Have y'all ever seen that movie back in the day? It was called Ben-Hur. That dude in the dude that acted in the movie 10 Commandments, he also played in this movie called Ben-Hur. And there's a scene on there where he's below decks with these dudes, and they got their hands on these oars. Oars is like a really big version of the paddle that you use when you're paddling a canoe. You have that paddle, you paddle in a canoe or you paddle in a kayak. Well, the Phoenician ships, they had really big versions of those. They had like these really big paddles that they used to paddle these ships. And it wasn't just, paddling energy that they were using to maneuver these ships. They also had sails, on the ships. As a matter of fact, not even just on the movie Ben-Hur, they showed them ships even on the movies like Jason and the Argonauts. But these are the type of ships that the Phoenicians had. And they were sailing these ships along just around the Mediterranean. But not just around the Mediterranean. When they would get really far west, they would end up over in the Americas. And at this time, like I said earlier, continental drift was not as vast as it is right now. The Americas were not that far from Africa. And also, when you came out of the Mediterranean at that particular time, you were running into the northeastern part of South America and the southeastern part of North America is where you were coming. That's where these Phoenicians were making contact with the Black Indians. The northeastern part of South America and the southeastern part of North America. If I'm not mistaken, the northeastern part of South America, I think that's where Brazil is. I gotta look at it again. Brazil, Argentina, I think that's the territory. Of course, El Salvador, Peru, all of that definitely that East Coast, was close to Africa. That East Coast and that Northeast Coast was close to West Africa. Same thing with the East Coast of North America and the Southeast, mainly the Southeast coast of North America was close to West Africa. But when you come out of the Mediterranean territory, that's the area that you were running into. The northeastern part of South America and the southeastern part of North America. And these Africans that were running into these Egyptians, and that's the other thing, Brother Dane Calloway and Brother Catz. Biblical Egypt was not in Africa. And that's one of the main reasons why they don't see any evidence of an exodus taking place over there in that place that they're calling Egypt today. That place that they're calling Egypt today and the place that they're calling Ethiopia today, that was not the names of those places in ancient times. The names of those places have been changed. The faces in those places have been changed. The names and the faces of those places have been changed for a reason. And I don't want to get into the reasons because I'm going to get off of what it is the ancestors want me to tell y'all. But biblical Egypt was over here in the Americas. And there are some of those that say that Africa was once connected to the Americas via Atlantis. But because of, I'll just say it, man. America today is how Atlantis was back then. And that's the type of destruction, the destruction that Atlantis encountered, that keystone that was connecting the Americas to Africa, that started the whole continental drift in the first place, with it, being, it's like on a faulty tectonic plate, and the whole continent ended up just falling into the ocean, causing the Americas to break away from the African plate. Then that continental drift is, now it's underway. But the same destruction that biblical Egypt or Atlantis suffered, that's the type of destruction that America's looking at. And, okay, so let me back up a little bit. So these Africans coming over on these Phoenician ships, and it wasn't just Africans on them ships. You had Greeks on them ships. You had Asians on them ships. You had East Indians on them ships. You know what I'm saying? Because the family in East Africa in them civilizations, they were mixing with the East Indians and the Asians and the people on the Mediterranean in Southern Europe. Those African leaders that created the first civilizations and them citizens of those East African civilizations, they were mixing bloodlines with those three. So now they've shown up on these Phoenician ships, and that's basically who the Phoenicians are. The Phoenicians are really just biracial Africans, Africans mixed with East Indians, Africans mixed with Asians, Africans mixed with South Europeans. That's really who Phoenicians are. And when the Bible would be talking to the Hebrews or the so-called Hebrew Israelites and pointing out how wicked the Hebrew Israelites was and showing how the Hebrew Israelites wasn't listening to God, they were always disobeying God, that's who the Phoenicians were. The leaders of Kush down there in the area as far as Tanzania, Kenya to Ethiopia, Kemetic leaders from the area where Nubia, all the way over to where Sumeria was, those were the gods, the leaders of those territories. Those were the gods. That was the government. That was the judges and the magistrates. And they had what was referred to as bloodline law. They had a law against mixing with outside nations so that they would not ever lose control of their dynasty, lose control of their nations, lose control of their rulership over their people. But there were citizens that, started, intermingling with the East Indians and the Asians and the ones from the north. Off the Mediterranean, Southern Europe. They had citizens that were breaking the law. And that's why people, that's why the Bible talks about slavery. That was the punishment for breaking bloodline law. You done made babies with these outside nations. You love them so much. You know how they say, God is love. We had gods or ancestors that loved these outside nations so much that they made babies with them. And that was against the law of the ancestors of the leaders of Cush and Kemet. So they would send, these people into those territories. If you made babies with the East Indian people, well, take your ass over there to the East Indians and you can be a servant to them, since you don't want to be a servant to your African leaders. Same thing with Asia. Oh, you done married an Asian, you making babies with the Asians. Well, take your ass over there and be servants to them, since you don't want to be servants to the African leaders. And same thing with them folks up there in the territories where Greece and Rome is at. Oh, you done made babies with these people. You love them so much. Well, take your ass on up there to Greece. Take your ass on up there to Rome and serve them. You know, since you don't want to be a servant to your own African people. And so now you got these children that are the result of these unions. Now they got both bloodlines running through their veins. You got children that are half East Indian and half African, and they gotta decide who they gotta listen, who they supposed to listen to, because people in Africa are children of the universe, or manifestations of the universe on earth, because they are God. That is who the children are supposed to be listening to. But because they also have the bloodline of people here from below, it was hard to listen or keep the ways, or it was more difficult to keep the ways of those from above than it was from the people here below, or the families from below. You know, so that is the war that was taking place in these people. That is the inner war, the inside war that the Bible is talking about. Your higher self fighting with your lower self. You know, your ancestors from above fighting with your ancestors from here below. And this is one of the main reasons I'm reaching out to the two of y'all, because that's the situation that you guys are in right now. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to explain that from a biblical standpoint. So, like I was saying earlier, the Phoenicians are coming over here into this territory where the black Indians are ruling. And once again, the intermingling starts taking place. And so this, in the Bible, the book talks about this one guy named Joseph. And the story goes on, you know, to say that, you know, Joseph started off as a slave over here, you know what I'm saying, you know, working for the black Indians, you know, being a servant to the black Indians. But he found favor with one of the leaders, with one of the black Indian leaders, and became one of the chiefs. He became a chief in that black Indian's house. And because he was like really close to that black Indian leader, he ended up marrying the sister of that black Indian leader. I believe it was I think it was the sister of that black Indian leader. But he marries the Bible refers to her as an Egyptian woman. Like I said earlier, Egypt was not in Africa. Biblical Egypt was not in Africa. It was not known that, or that term did not fall on that territory in Africa until much later. That is not what it was called in the beginning. But over here was Egypt. And this Egyptian woman that Joseph married, he had 2 children with this woman. The Bible refers to these 2 children as Ephraim and Manasseh. Oh, also, I gotta tell y'all, since I'm telling y'all that biblical Egypt was not in Africa, if you read like Genesis chapter 11, you'll see that we was coming over here even then with the biblical Abraham. Biblical Abraham is not even an individual man. It's one and more. That's what Abraham is. Abraham is one and more. Abraham means the black father of multitudes that crossed back over into the territory of Canaan, or into that African territory, left from the southern Iraq territory and returned back into the African territory, because look at the name. Abraham. Abram is Ibri, and Ibri means to cross over. And the word Ham means tropical. You know, and we all know that Africa is the tropical place. And also, you know, if you want to, you know, go by what white supremacists be teaching about Ham, Ham also means black. So, Abraham. and they read left to right. So Ham, Ibri, and when you can say Ham, Ibri, Abraham. So that's black father of multitudes that crossed over back into the territory of the black people, into the territory of Ham. He crossed over from the area of Sumeria, what they call it, Mesopotamia, southern Iraq. He crossed back over into the territory that his ancestors originated from. Or should I say, they, the black fathers of multitudes, crossed back over into the territory that their ancestors originated from. They crossed back over into Africa. And they were given that territory called Canaan in Genesis chapter 13. But in Genesis chapter 11 all the way up to like Genesis chapter 17, there is another union between these Africans and Egyptian women. But the Bible refers to it as the union between Abraham and Hagar in Genesis chapter 16. Hagar is a black Indian woman, and she gave a son to a black, or should I also remind you that Hagar also is not just one black Indian woman. It's one or more black Indian women gave children to one or more black Indian men, and these are called Ishmael. And Ishmael is also said to be 12 kings over here in this territory. Just like you have a so-called 12 tribes of Israel over in East Africa, you also had 12 kings over here in on the east coast of the Americas. And the reason why they are referred to as kings is because they have the bloodline of those from the above running through their veins. They have been grafted into that bloodline, which makes them so-called royalty. That was the case with anybody that got grafted into the bloodline of those who were manifestations of the universe. Africans, those who were grafted into the bloodline of Africans became royalty. They were seen as royalty because they had the ability, they were basically granted access to eternal life. People that are designed by the universe, we have eternal life, meaning that we have the ability to return back to this planet further down our bloodline or further down the bloodline. Originally, East Indians, Asians, Europeans, the straight-haired races, originally they did not have that ability. Children of the earth did not have the ability to come back, from the dead, so to speak. They were like the regular animals. When a bear dies, that's it. It's over. When a dog dies, that's it. It's over. A coyote, a beaver, a warthog, a pig, a horse, a cow, a sheep, a goat. Any animal that you can think of, when they die, that's it. They return back to this earth that they came from. But it's not like that when it comes down to us, that we're designed by the universe and planted here on earth. When we die, our energy goes back to the ether, but the ether is what's giving oxygen to everything down here on earth. The ether goes through the sun transfers the ether energy into these trees and all the green life, and then the green life does photosynthesis and turns ether into oxygen that we're breathing. And that ether, that oxygen that we're breathing, is what is igniting our heart, which is making that combustion happen in our heart. And when we die and we give up that last breath, that consciousness of the universe, it returns back to the ether, but we're still on a rotation until we materialize again in another woman on this bloodline, further down the bloodline. That is how we come back from the dead. Originally, it was not like that with the straight-haired races. So this is the reason why they were seen as royalty. When they got grafted into this bloodline, when they were returned, when they were sent out into the foreign lands that they fell in love with, when they was making babies, like you have one of these Africans make a child with an East Indian, an Asian, or one of them from Greece or Rome. When they would send them off to those territories to be with those people, they all had that same start that Joseph had. Joseph started off as a slave, but because of who he was, a manifestation of the universe, he arose to a position of power. He arose to a position of power because that's just the nature of the universe. As a manifestation of the universe, you have a responsibility to this planet to maintain ma'at balance. And that's what happened with the East Indians, the Asians, and the Europeans from Greece and Rome that mixed blood with us. They became a part of this citizenship. They became a part of this bloodline. And they too now have a responsibility to this planet to maintain a ma'at balance in India, to maintain a ma'at balance in Asia, to maintain a ma'at balance in Europe, to maintain a ma'at balance over here in the Americas. And that's one reason why I'm reaching out to y'all. Because according to the history, you know what I'm saying, y'all was supposed to be maintaining a ma'at balance over here. You Top Cat and Dan Calloway, y'all like a Ephraim and Manasseh. Y'all half African, half black Indian. Y'all have a responsibility to maintain ma'at balance over here, but y'all ain't been doing it. Y'all have allowed the Europeans to come over here and do to your land what they're doing to Africa. Y'all allowed these people to come over here and colonize your stuff. And when the stranger comes in and takes you out of your position as a demigod on earth, because that's what everybody on the outside is. Africans are gods. Everyone that they made children with, the children are demigods. The half African, half East Indian children in India, those are demigods. The half African, half Asian children over in Asia, those are demigods. The half African, half European children up there in Europe, those are demigods. The half African, half black Indian children over here in the West, these are y'all demigods. But y'all have a responsibility in y'all territory to maintain a ma'at balance, and y'all did not do it. And now the same destruction that came upon Atlantis is coming here. Go do your research on Yellowstone supervolcano. That type of destruction comes every time ma'at balance is no more. When ma'at balance has totally ebbed away, when the scale is no longer balanced in a particular territory, that is the type of destruction that comes upon this planet. That is what the Bible is illustrating from the days of Noah that everybody says is fake, but it's just a story. How do you tell a story that done happened so many times? It's like all these different mistakes led up to this one result. It's like all these different mistakes led up to this one result. How do you consolidate all of those mistakes into a story to illustrate what is going to equal this result? That is what the story of Noah is. That is what the Genesis chapter 11 story is. The story of Moses in the Exodus, that is what that is. The story of Nehemiah and them separating from Babylon to go rebuild their ancestors' kingdom. That is what it is. These are stories. All of these stories are telling about all of the mistakes that have happened on this planet because gods are not doing their job on this planet. Manifestations of the universe are not doing their job on this planet as gods. And then the scale of balance, of ma'at balance, tips and then the universe responds by sending some type of signal into the sun, and then the sun sends some types of communication to the earth, and then Mother Nature start whooping everybody's ass and removing people off of the planet. As if we have become a cancer. So I'm saying all of that to say this. What I need y'all to do, Top Cat and Dane Calloway, I need y'all to read Genesis chapter 49, right? And I want y'all to pay attention to the names. Pay attention to the names. I don't want y'all to, talk about these people ain't real. Forget about that. We know that those names are not real. Just look at them as metaphors. I want you to read Genesis chapter 49 and read through those names and what their purposes are and who they are and so on and so forth. But yeah, keep in mind that these are metaphors. Then after you read Genesis chapter 49, I want you to read after you read Genesis chapter 49, I need y'all to go read Revelations chapter 7 and look at the names. One of the names from Genesis chapter 49 is not mentioned in Revelations chapter 7. I'll say that again. One of the names from Genesis chapter 49 is not mentioned in Revelations chapter 7. And I need y'all to ask yourself the question, why? Because, once again, biblical Ephraim and Manasseh, which were the sons that the Africans, Joseph, the Africans that the Bible's calling Joseph, the children that they made with the Egyptian women, Ephraim and Manasseh, you're going to see that, well, actually, let me say this. Not only are you not going to see the name of one of them from Genesis chapter 49 mentioned in Revelations chapter 7, you're also not going to see the name of one of these sons, Ephraim. I need y'all to ask the question why it is that the name Manasseh, who is half African, half black Indian, why is that name showing up in Revelation chapter 7, but Ephraim's name is not showing up in Genesis chapter 7? Okay, so now I gotta make a side note. I gotta pause talking to y'all. I gotta pause talking to Dane Calloway and Top Cat right quick and talk to these Europeans. Because there are Europeans that follow me on social media and they see me always talking about biblical Dan. They always see me referring to President Putin as a descendant of biblical Dan, the African albino. Because y'all gonna read Revelation chapter 7 and y'all not gonna see Dan's name in it. But y'all not gonna see Dan's name in Revelation chapter 7 because Dan became so big that they ended up they can't live in Africa. These are African albinos. They could not stay in Africa. They had to get their own land. They had no choice. At that time when sunscreen did not exist, they had to relocate into that territory. Especially after you got also biblical Japheth. It all started with biblical Japheth, the very first. Well, I'm not gonna say he's the very first. Biblical Noah. That was the very first African albino, and then that melanin recessive gene transfers over into biblical Japheth. And remember, these are not just one person's, man. This is like one or more people. Biblical Noah, when I say, the first African albino, that's not just one individual. That's one or more African albinos. And that gene is just showing itself transferring down the bloodlines. And it's showing up in Japheth, which is one or more African albinos. And it's showing up again later on in scripture as biblical Dan. Same thing. That's just one or more African albinos. But you have to see it as a nation that became so enlarged they could not stay in Africa. They had to go get their own territory. And keep in mind that they're also, this African bloodline is also mixing with Greeks and Romans. So don't trip out because you don't see Dan's name in Revelations chapter 7. You got to count biblical Dan in that verse 9 category. Verse 9, where it says, "Then I saw a number that no man could number." That I saw a multitude that no man could number, of every kindred, speaking different tongues from different nations. You gotta put Dan in that category, because that's the same thing with the people over in India that are grafted into this bloodline, the people over in Asia that are grafted into this bloodline, the people up there in Russia that are grafted into this bloodline, and these people over here in the Americas that are grafted into this bloodline. They all fall under that category. They are the new earth. The new heaven is Africa. The new earth is when these children grafted into our bloodline resurrect their kingdoms under the same laws, statutes, commandments that Africa rises up in. Because Africa's definitely getting ready to rise again and become what it was in the ancient past. And when it rises again and becomes what it was in the ancient past, all of the children that are grafted in their bloodline in the north, south, east, and west, their kingdoms are going to resurrect and become what they were in the ancient past. And you see it happening. That's what BRICS is. Brazil, Russia, India, China, with South Africa. And y'all see what's going on with Ibrahim Traore. I mean, it's already in motion. And so now I'm going back to talking to Top Catz and Dan Calloway. And I guess I'm going to close out with this. What Ancestors is trying to get y'all to understand is there is a reason why you don't see Ephraim's name in Revelation chapter 7. And y'all need to take into account Yellowstone supervolcano. And the reason why you got to take Yellowstone supervolcano into account because of what Matthew chapter 24 is talking about. Matthew chapter 24 is the prediction of Mount Vesuvius volcano eruption, which is what caused us to come over here in the first place. There was another eruption like that. There was another destruction like that in 79 AD, that Mount Vesuvius destruction. There was another cataclysmic event like that happened even before that, which caused, Africans to start coming over here, to escape that devastation. But y'all need to take into account Yellowstone supervolcano. And my question, and this is the question that Ancestors want me to ask y'all. Do you want to be like Ephraim, or do you want to be like Manasseh? And I'm asking y'all that question because of some of the arguments that I've seen y'all having with Pan-Africanists. Y'all got people among y'all that don't even identify as having African bloodline. And that's not good. That is not good. It's not good because, like I said earlier, y'all allowed your neighbors to come over here and take over your land. And now look at what your land has become. Look at what your black Indian ancestors' land has become. It's not what it was. The same destruction that it saw in the biblical story of Moses and the Pharaohs, that was a cataclysmic event that took place. The Exodus that from here, when the Africans and they had mixed with the black Indians, when they returned back to Africa, when they left up out of the west to return back to the east, and they took their biracial children with them, why is it that Manasseh only goes with them, but you don't see Ephraim among them? It's just like that story in Sodom and Gomorrah. They think of Ephraim like the wife of biblical Lot. And remember what I said, Ephraim is not just one person, it's one or more. These biracial black Indians and Africans had that same mentality of biblical Lot. They did not want to let go of the foolishness, the wickedness, the sickness, the pervertedness that was going on in the land. They did not want to separate from it. They were comfortable in it. You know, yeah, they was complaining, you know, about it, but they were not complaining about it or upset with it so much that they wanted to leave it. They were complaining about it. They wasn't happy with it, but they didn't want to leave it. That is the story of biblical Lot's wife in Sodom and Gomorrah. They weren't happy with the pervertedness and the sickness and the unrighteousness and the evil that was going on in that territory, but she didn't want to leave it. She wanted it to change, but circumstances were showing her that this is never going to change. The only way this is going to change is if it is erased off the face of the earth and then it regrows again as something new. That's the only way it's going to change. It's got to be completely removed and then rebuilt from scratch. It's got to come back as something totally new. So, according to the biblical story of, you know, Moses and the Exodus, you know, it talks about, you know, how they crossed over, you know, like Moses parted the sea, and that's just metaphors. What really happened was there was a cataclysmic event, a cataclysmic earthquake, which was the result of a cataclysmic volcano eruption. There was a cataclysmic volcanic eruption that caused a cataclysmic earthquake. The tectonic plate was failing, and the continent started sinking. Another flood of Noah situation, and people that be talking about the story of Noah and the entire planet flooded. No, the entire planet did not flood. You had a major flooding of a continent. Not all continents were flooded. The whole earth or the whole planet did not flood. This was a continent. This was a major flood because it was a continent that was sinking. And because it was sinking, what happened is that the water around the continent, the only word I could come up with is it ran away. When a continent is sinking, it's actually pushing all of the water away from it. It's like if you take a bucket and you push it down in the water, you'll see water retreat away from that area where you push the bucket down into the water. You push the bucket, you forcefully push the bucket down into the water, and you'll see the water vacate that space that you pushed the bucket in. But you will see that water come rushing back into that space where you pushed the bucket in at. And that's what happened with Atlantis. It's like it forcefully sunk into the ocean and it pushed all of the water away. And when the waters had receded, that is how they were able to get back over into African territory, or over into territories that were basically not affected by the tsunami when the water came rushing back in. Do you want to be an Ephraim or a Manasseh? Do you want to be like Ephraim, the half African, half black Indian people who did not want to leave here in the West and return to Africa with their African family? Or do you want to be like Manasseh, the half black, the half African, half black Indian children that did go back to Africa with their family and escaped the destruction that had came or that was coming. Which one do y'all want to be? And let me ask you this question: how do you think how do y'all think what was destroyed over here? How do you think it got rebuilt? You don't think that Manasseh came back over here? You don't think that half black Indian, half African children came back over here from Africa to rebuild what their ancestors had lost back then? Because they did. As demigods, as leaders, as the 12 kings, the societies were rebuilt from scratch with the same laws, statutes, commandments, and understandings that their African family had. But as time moves on, here comes the Europeans coming over here because of what happened during that destruction in 79 AD. Because that biblical destruction with Moses in the Exodus, that was before 79 AD. But now, Mount Vesuvius done rocked the Greeks and the Romans and that northeast African territory, also the area where Morocco is at. All of that got rocked, and now they sailing back over here, to see what y'all doing. Because y'all wasn't affected by that. So they're like, well, let's go over there where Manasseh's at. Let's go hang out with Manasseh. Because, technically they were saved because of what was predicted in Matthew chapter 24. Of course you had those that didn't, that actually went deeper into Africa, like, into the Congo, all the way down there into Tanzania, because Tanzania was another gathering place. So, the ones that came over here, and I have to be honest with y'all, man, the ones that came over here, I think that those were the Judas Iscariot ones, the Judas Iscariot types. The ones that were responsible for the destruction coming in the first place. You know what I'm saying? The wealthy ones that were in a position to actually save themselves. They wasn't supposed to save themselves, but because they were in a position to save themselves, they brought their asses over here. Whereas the ones that listened to those that were talking in Matthew chapter 24 and predicting the destruction that was coming upon the Roman society, and those that were following the Roman society, all of them went further down into the area where like Kenya and Tanzania and Ethiopia is. They all gathered down there. And then the traders of Africa, the ones that was able to save themselves, or the ones that ancestors still had love for and spared them, even though they sold their people out, they came over here messing with y'all. And y'all didn't stand y'all ground. Y'all messed around and let them take over your stuff. And now that destruction is coming again. So those people that's among y'all, Top Catz and Dane Calloway, that's talk about they not African, they ain't got no African blood in them, they gonna end up like Ephraim. They gonna end up erased. They gonna go down in destruction with this place. They gonna be just like Ephraim, because they are denying the African side of their family. That's what Jesus is. Jesus is not an individual. That is not even the name of any individual that was over there anyway. Jesus, according to the language of the Phoenicians, that word is pronounced kayut. Kayut, and I think that was their way of saying cross. The English word cross, in Phoenician they were saying kayut, but it means life and living. And what that cross was, that's the Ankh cross. That's what the Ankh cross represents, life and living. They weren't saying cross, they were saying Kayut. But the citizens under that banner of the Ankh cross, that's who's talking in Matthew chapter 24. Descendants of the original civilizations. Descendants of the first civilizations created here on earth. They saw what was coming. They saw that the universe was getting ready to send another correction down to the planet, and they were telling people that, look, you don't want to be here when the universe corrects this planet, when the universe resets this planet. You need to get to this place of refuge. And there were people that listened, and like I said, they got down into Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, and they escaped all of that was happening up there in Northeast Africa, where the Sphinx and the pyramids is, Morocco area, the southern part of Europe, Pompeii, all of that. They survived all of that. And then the few that were caught in that mess, that had, the money to get on ships, that had the money to get on cruise ships and sail away from that nonsense, they brought their asses over here because they knew that y'all was totally unaware of what had happened. Over here, Manasseh, or the 12 kings, the half black Indian, half African children, the Aztecs, everybody over here in this area was totally unaware of the deception that took place over there in that territory. Didn't even know that those people were responsible for the death of millions, possibly billions. The descendants of the original civilization, them citizens under the banner of the Ankh cross that was like, yo, the universe is getting ready to reset this planet. You need to vacate this place. You need to make a mass exodus up out of this place. Them wealthy Romans, them black people black Africans that was rubbing elbows with the Romans, the sellouts, like them Tariq Nasheed types, rubbing elbows with the wealthy white folks, talking nonsense, talking all kind of mess about his black family. He's down there in Kemet and Nubia and Ethiopia and Kenya and all of other territories down in Africa, calling them people tethers and everything. Judas Iscariot types had everybody following what they was saying. And so there was a lot of people that didn't leave them Roman territories. There was a lot of people that didn't leave those Greek territories. There was a lot of people that didn't leave Crete and Manoah because of how the Tariq Nasheeds in their day was talking. It's like, we ain't no damn Africans. We a whole new different people. We ain't gotta go back to no Africa. We ain't gotta go back to our ancestors' territory. We a whole new different people. Don't nobody want to deal with them tethers and all that. There was a Tariq Nasheed back in that day. And there was a whole bunch of, go look at the documentary about Pompeii, Crete, Manoah, the Mount Vesuvius destruction. All of those black people that died, they suffered that because of people like Tariq and people that's among y'all, Top Cat and Dane Calloway. And I'm hoping that y'all not one of them, because those people today, the ones that were responsible for all of them descendants of our ancestors losing their life in that destruction, those people that was responsible for them losing their life, those were the black FBI COINTELPRO agents of their day. It was black FBI COINTELPRO agents of that day that was responsible for the death of all of those black people, those Africans, those people with African bloodline. They were responsible for the death of all of the people that was up there in the Roman territories that refused to leave. when children under the banner of the Ant Cross told them, you need to leave up out of this place. You need to separate from Rome. You need to cut ties with the Greeks. You need to leave your family behind. You need to get down to the land of your African ancestors. You need to join yourself to the African side of your family. You are children. You are also manifestations of the universe. You are demigods. You got to join hands with the gods. You can't join hands with the children of the earth right now. The earth is out of balance and it's got to be cleansed. But they didn't listen. And they ended up getting erased because of how these Tariq Nasheed people was talking. And it is happening again. History is repeating itself. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 9. It ain't nothing new under the sun. We always have had Judas Iscariot among us. And I'm hoping that the two of y'all is not that. I'm hoping that y'all not modern day Judas Iscariot. I'm hoping that y'all not working with the American government, trying to trap black people here, because these black people here in America are actually America's military force. How many able-bodied black people here in America are eligible to fight in America's military, to be drafted? And the American government can use them to fight against these outside territories. Because it scares me when I hear people among you, Top Cat, people among you, Dane Calloway, talking about they not Africans, they ain't got no African blood. That tells me that you can take up arms against your African brothers and sisters over there on the continent. That's what it tells me. It also tells me that you can take up arms against Asians that have African bloodline. You can take up arms against East Indians that have African bloodline. You can take up arms against Europeans that have African bloodline. And you got African bloodline, but claiming that you don't have it. So this is where the video, might sound like I'm shooting some smoke at y'all, but trust me, believe me when I tell you, I'm hoping that y'all not that, because we got a problem if you are. Ancestors is reaching, or what is it called, an olive branch? This is an olive branch from African ancestors. We are hoping that you are not Judas Iscariot. We are hoping that you are a Manasseh. We are hoping that you hear the African side of you talking to you. We do understand that you are also a Black Indian bloodline. Ancestors can't hold that against you because of what disobedient ancestors did. There was a law stating that we was not supposed to be mixing bloodlines with these outside nations, but we have gods that did it and made y'all demigods. And the universe can't reject y'all, because y'all are children of the universe too. That is the reason why you see the same glyphs in the pyramids over here in the Americas. When you look at the glyphs over here at the pyramids in the Americas, they resemble the same glyphs that are over there in the place that we call Egypt today. You see an honor of the sun, an honor of the Aten, or like the Phoenicians referred to it, an honor of Yah and the Most High, which is the universe. So that's what Ancestors is hoping. Ancestors is hoping that you see that you are connected to this African bloodline so that you can save yourself. Believe me when I tell you, it has been proven it is not wise to separate yourself from African family. And you will see people who are indigenous to Africa shaking hands with the enemy. What we refer to as house niggas. being Judas Iscariots, being traitors. Yes, you will see indigenous people from the continent of Africa being traitors. But they got what's coming to them. Just like the Bible say, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. They gonna get theirs too. They're gonna get theirs just like any Judas Iscariot. Just like every Judas Iscariot has got theirs in the end. So I think that's it, man. I think that's it. I'm gonna end it. I'm gonna end this live video with this question. Are you an Ephraim or are you a Manasseh? Why is Manasseh's name showing up in Revelation chapter 7, but Ephraim's name is not showing up in Revelation chapter 7? I'm hoping that the two of y'all is a Manasseh. Because if you not, yeah, we're gonna have problems. And with that being said, yo, peace, blessings, love of our ancestors that is dwelling in the light of Yah, the Most High, shine down on and in the lives of all of the creators, righteous children resurrected as gods on earth. Ancestors' protection be around the both of y'all. Live righteous.